Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomena, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you would like to find out about the broadcast schedule for the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and for Channel 21, that's the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV, www.simultv.com. My guest this hour is Christopher Fulton, who was born just outside of Washington, D.C., into a family with rich military history. He was on his way to being accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, but chose a career in commercial construction. His discipline and diligence took him to the top of the high-rise construction industry in Vancouver, British Columbia. Now, where at the age of 33, during the height of his success, he was extradited and spent years in federal prisons in the United States for his possession of physical evidence in JFK's assassination. I'm not kidding, X-Zone Nation. This is a very true story. The name of Christopher's book that he wrote with Michelle Fulton, The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination, How One Man's Custody of the Bobby Kennedy's Hidden Evidence Changed Our Past and Continues to Shape Our Future. Joining us now is Christopher Fulton. And Christopher, welcome back to the X-Zone. And I must say, I still get calls about your first interview with us. People are saying, how can they do that? And, you know, here you are, a Canadian citizen. You were imprisoned in the United States. How could this...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how can a travesty like this happen?
Well, I mean, it happens because my friend and I, myself, both came into possession a large amount of materials that were non-reviewed and non-classified, and were kind of swept away and forgotten about by the United States government. And when we came into possession of all these materials, and that included important assassination evidence that Robert Kennedy had utilized during his private investigation, the government became painfully aware that they had a problem. And I was put through a process that was reserved for people that are terrorists of the United States or enemies of the state. I was put through this on a federal level. I was subpoenaed, I was indicted, I was extradited, I was put through the process of interrogation without counsel through the Justice Department and the intelligence communities on this, and they wanted to resolve this very quickly and make sure that the FBI could come in and suppress these materials, and they should be classified away from the American public and the world. And this is a travesty for not only for the the American citizens, but for the world at large, because President Kennedy, I had learned through reviewing all of this that really was assassinated and perished in his attempts to stop a limited nuke exchange with Russia and the invasion of Cuba, and the fact that he was very much dedicated to the rights and the qualities and the distribution of wealth and the problems that we have with race and religion and all of these things. This was happening back in 62 and 63. So the divisions and the problems that we're having right now and to such an extent are a large result because that was a public coup that had taken place, and the United States government is not ready to acknowledge that. They're not ready to open up that situation and expose it for the truth that it is. And because of that, the people that I was close to involved with this, including JFK Jr. was involved with this, all died. They perished. My mother perished in this. My lawyer perished in this, et cetera, et cetera. I was lucky enough to live through it. I was considered what they call a high-value debrief, and they wanted to bring me in and not discuss this with the Canadian government. They brought me in under tax charges, but they wanted to bring me in and debrief me on this and get this stuff sealed up and buttoned up so that it would not be released and could not get out through the U.S. press. The interesting thing about it is the press is so controlled, the mainstream media in the United States, to such an extent. The real concern took place when Donald Trump got on board and started to push this agenda in 1997, and then CNN and other mainstream media outlets were actually looking into this. And I had the ability at that time to actually do interviews with them and talk about this, and that scared the hell out of the Justice Department and the CIA and the White House. And they really wanted to jump on this and make sure that did not take place.
Now, were you initially arrested here in Canada or in the United States?
I was arrested. I was living in Canada and working in Canada at the time, building high-rise towers in Vancouver, British Columbia, and brought into the United States and put through a process that's reserved for, like I say, enemies of the state. That's right. And so I was put aboard federal aircraft for a month, every day, every morning at the tarmac in the morning, and got up and we'd go up to 10,000 feet in chains and come back down. We'd go up and down all day long into federal facilities like that with nobody knowing where we were, no access to attorneys. And I had asked the federal prosecutors that were involved in Washington. I said, "Listen, why did you put me through that?" And they said, "Well, because that's the process." And he says, "Don't even worry about it. If we really didn't like you, you'd be in Guantanamo or you'd be on that plane for a year." So I had to learn the very hard way of what it was like to be unbroken on the back of the resolve of something that's a U.S. national security concern or a secret that they want to keep buried, and the fact of it is they've done a very good job of that up until about when we started to break this in 97 and 98, and that became an unpredictable concern for them. President Reagan had got involved with us on this. The Russian intelligence services had talked to me. CSIS had talked to me about this. This was a Canadian intelligence service, and they people were starting to talk about this, and it became a concern because even the CIA didn't know the extent of the materials that we had. They knew that it had transferred. They know that it had gone through a federal judge or a process, or rather to an inheritance process, which is the title of the book itself. But the legalities of this were such that they were trying desperately to figure out did these materials fall under the U.S. deed of gift that was signed by Robert Kennedy in 1965 with the GSA, with the General Services Administration. And if they could get these materials to fall under that deed of gift, they could have gone in and immediately secured them and confiscated them and classified them. But the problem was these materials did not fall under that gift. And they had the biggest lawyers in the country working on this. They had President Clinton's lawyers and the White House lawyers working on this. And they realized that these materials fell outside of that deed of gift, and they were in a pickle. They were in a problem. And they needed to resolve this, and they got my friend to sign secret agreements with the Justice Department and sign them with the Kennedy family. But even with the pressures that were put to bear on him and the continued suppression that they came in and classified the materials, they put so much pressure on him that he passed away. My mother was subpoenaed in this. I was also brought in this, and she was threatened to the point that she had a stroke and died. And on it goes. I was locked up in federal prison being pushed through this process of secret interrogation when JFK Jr. passed away, and he had paid $1 million for this evidence to be put out to the American public at some point in time. He had my understanding was that he had done an interview with Castro and had talked with some other individuals, including myself, and was going to take these materials as evidence to tell the American public that they'd been lied to, misled. And the truth of the matter needed to be, revealed so that we could have a better political process and a more open position between the government and the people of the United States, and resolve this. And unfortunately, it did not turn out that way. The Justice Department was told, without doubt, your orders are to gather this evidence together with either through the AARB, which is the Assassination Records Review Board, which had subpoena powers under President Clinton. These materials were not there. These things that are put together to be a way to gather information and then release them to the American public, that has not come to fruition. What's come to fruition is the fact that they get this last Assassination Records Review Board, which is appointed by President Clinton, had subpoena power to gather these evidence materials from around the world. Could do anything that was necessary, had their own power, their own government. They were really essentially their own government agency, reporting back directly to the President of the United States. So they brought anything that had to do with the assassination, Cuba, anything that had to do that was a concern in this regard. It was brought under one umbrella, and the idea was that they were going to release this to the American public. They released information to the American public, but nothing that would do them any good. The materials that Robert White had that showed a different story of what happened to our president of the United States, that was classified away and confiscated by the FBI.
All right, stand by, Christopher. We've got to take a break. Please stand by. Exonation. Christopher Fulton is our special guest this hour. He's the author of The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination, along with Michelle Fulton. His website, www.cmfulton.com. Fascinating story. Like I said, fact is stranger than fiction. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Exonation, Christopher Fulton is our guest. He's the author of The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination. And on the back it says, Bobby Kennedy quietly fought the United States government to keep control over key evidence in his brother's murder. Then he used that secret evidence to prevent World War III. In the mid-1990s, following the death of Evelyn Lincoln, President Kennedy's personal secretary, that evidence transferred into the hands of our guest this hour, Christopher Fulton. The incredible weight of Christopher's bequest crossed his fate with Russian government, President Ronald Reagan, the Clinton White House, future President Donald Trump, the U.S. Department of Justice, the Secret Service, and the Kennedy family themselves. Christopher was obligated to expose a deeply hidden past to the world, which made him a threat to national security state and their plans for America's future. His website, www.cmfulton.com. Christopher, always great having you on the show. Please continue, because this story has to get out.
Well, it's a difficult thing to tell in a very short time.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really important is the fact that the President Kennedy had taken a 180-degree turn of how he wanted the United States to progress and how he saw the world, and the plans that were in place,
mm-hmm.
that were put in place after following World War II, thought that that they had to go to an exchange to keep control of this post nuke world that we had, and both the Kennedys thought that was an insane idea, that even on a first strike, on a limited strike into Moscow, which was the plan put on President Kennedy's desk, that we'd lose 42 million American dead minimally. The Pentagon was arguing, but if we don't strike first, we could lose 100 million plus, and on it goes. But the Kennedys really believed, and were far ahead of the curve on this, and really believed that we could go directly to the source on these issues, that these problems were man-made and could be resolved by us, and that we could have a bright future and a peaceful future. And I see it very clearly as I listen to the recordings that President Kennedy did in the Oval Office in 62 and 63 in secret to keep everybody on point. I can clearly see that this president could be sitting in the Oval Office right now. Mm-hmm. The issues that we're dealing with and the concerns that we're looking at this snap of this rubber band of this assassination, we're feeling that sting right now. And it would be it's very important to understand what had happened to President Kennedy and why he died, and why Robert Kennedy had died following him, and how he's trying to honor his brother's death and resolving these issues and honoring that. We lost a very, very important process of direction of who we are and how we're going to operate in the world. And there is a Russia and a China and a North Korea and an Iran and etc. sitting back right now thinking how the world is going to be without a United States of America. And I think you really have to think about that. You have to think that through very carefully. What does that mean? The infighting that's going on in this country, the bitterment that everybody is feeling on so many issues, they're tearing this country asunder and tearing us apart and weakening us. The only reason that we have strength is because we're united. That we're a country that came together thinking democracy was important, that freedom was important, and we're being represented by factions of large corporations and other very selfish and very indulged individuals with too much money and too much wealth that are taking us in a direction that is extremely dangerous. And if we do not take it upon ourselves to pass laws that say no more of the influence in Washington that comes from these corporations, that's going to stop. That ends. Pass laws that says that the local government's going to have more control, that we're going to lessen this federal reach, that we're going to lessen these laws that keep being more and more intrusive onto our rights as who we are. I want to share something with the listeners. When I was in Lewisburg Penitentiary, I was sitting in a room and I was staring out the window at the American flag flying out into the main. This is walls of this penitentiary and these gun towers. And I had one of the guards come up and tell me, and he said, "Nothing personal. I like you. From what I've known you, I like you. So I'm going to share this with you. If there is a nuke, an atomic detonation anywhere in North America, our orders are to come in and shoot you in the head.
Wow.
You're an enemy of the state. Everybody's an enemy of the state. Every single individual in any prison across the United States dies. If a nuke weapon detonates anywhere, even on a limited capacity or from any situation that the government feels it's losing control and they want the Pentagon, I don't care what it is, what scenario the CIA has come up with in their think tank. If one of those weapons detonates, our way of life ends, because everything that we know, that we've known, our freedoms, our understanding of things, our ability to have an open communication, all of these things are going to stop, and this can happen very, very quickly. And this is something President Kennedy was facing in his presidency, and he dedicated his life to making sure that would not happen. But we're looking at the same sort of scenarios, the same sort of trouble, the same sort of concerns right now. And if we don't take an active participation in this as citizens of the United States, as citizens of Canada, people in a free world of democracy matters, freedom matters. If we keep infighting, if we keep squabbling over all these things and we don't pay attention, we're going to lose the most important thing that we have to give our children in the future of the world, which is what was so desperately fought for, that we're not going to be controlled by this 0.5% or this king and queen or somebody who's going to make these ultimate decisions and say off with their head. That's the end of it. We don't like that. That's the end of that. But I think that's what's really important.
But President Trump, when he was elected, said that he wanted to drain the swamp. Isn't this something that he would like to get behind and push forward and come up and show the public that this is why President Kennedy lost his life, this is why Bobby Kennedy lost his life, and the sacrifices that other men and women, including your family, and my heart goes out to you, my friend. Wouldn't he want to make this right?
I think he may be interested in doing that. It's very possible. He certainly showed an interest in this capacity in 1997 when that began. But I could also tell that he was very, very savvy in how he did things, and it wasn't him speaking out and saying this, and this. He just gave us a platform to work with, and then all hell broke loose on us. But the thing of it is that he tried to get the records released that are in the National Archives. My name appears in the National Archives. But I can tell you, President Reagan told us that there was a CIA agent involved in this that had removed those important materials from there a long time ago. They're gone. My materials that were involved in this, the investigation that came through me and through the ARB and through the White House, I desperately wanted to get my hands on that folder. And we put a 30-day investigation into the National Archives, and they came back and said, yep, we know that folder. We know it's supposed to be here. There's a place for it, but there's no pull slip. We don't know what agency took it or even if the President of the United States had taken it, but it's gone. So the American people, even if everything was released tomorrow, would not get the accurate picture of what actually has taken place, because they just don't want that door opened. Once you open that door, where does it stop? What law is now real law? What law is? If you have the Johnson administration as a false administration, complicit in the murder of a sitting president, where does it stop? If you indict Hillary Clinton, where does it stop? Does the United States government start to fall? Does the rest of the world look at us and say now the infrastructure of the United States is crumbling? So that someone like Mr. Trump obviously has been briefed and looks at these things and has to understand that, if you're going to progress, that you have to do it in a way that's workable. You don't want to blow the whole system out of the water. And I can understand that and I can respect that. But at the same time, I think if we do not start to make these changes, if we do not start to deviate our course, if we do not really do what President Kennedy, the last thing President Kennedy said, or wrote, didn't say, he wrote down, was government reform. We are going forward with this idea. We are going to reform the United States government. And believe me, he was well on the way to the path to do that. Within 9 days of his assassination, we would have had dramatic changes.
What kind of changes? There would have been free elected, democratically elected, or at least the illusion of that in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
We would have had a resolve of the Cold War almost immediately. It certainly wouldn't have lasted another 10 or 20, whatever the years that went on with all of this. It would have been resolved. That was all on the table. We certainly would have had our troops and all the CIA. The most importantly is the CIA personnel pulled out of Vietnam. There wouldn't have been an ongoing 10-year planned Vietnam War that took place in Vietnam. And all of this money that's being allocated for these black budgets to the CIA would have stopped. It would have turned into a military operation only, directed by the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, the President of the United States. He was very much trying to take control. He was in a battle for the control and the goodwill of the world. And Jackie Kennedy was very aware of this too, and she was very scared. She was very scared. I've read things in her will in 62 and 63. She was very concerned and worried about her children, about her, about an assassination attempt even then in 62.
All right, Chris, stand by, my friend. We've got to take our break at the bottom of the hour. Christopher Fulton is our guest, Exonation. This is fact. It is not fiction. The name of his book is The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination. His website is cmfulton.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, Ufo Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Exonation, Christopher Fulton is our guest this hour, www.cmfulton.com. He, along with Michelle Fulton, are the authors of The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination. Who was responsible for the assassination of President John F. Kennedy?
There were a limited amount of individuals at the top of certain organizations, one being the Central Intelligence Agency, and there were plans for foreign assassinations and so forth that they were utilizing at the time, and this reversed on President Kennedy. Also, they had the complicity of Lyndon Johnson, had to have him on board, and of course the director of the FBI was aware of this. This was something that was allowed to happen with sanction. Which is a very sad, it's a very, very sad statement to make.
Do you mean that President Kennedy was assassinated because he wanted to do the right thing for the country and the right thing for America and the right thing for the Americans?
Well, the plans and the people that he were crossing, the money that he was going, the fortunes would have been reversed very quickly, and I can tell you without getting into too much detail that President Kennedy was very interesting because he had access to large amounts of money, and really a lot of things that were going on, and I've not talked about this before, were briefcases full of money being utilized for good and bad. The briefcases that were utilized out of the White House were being used for good, and briefcases that were coming out of Texas Oil and other places were being utilized for bad. And there was a battle going on as to what side of this fence people were going to fall on and how the world was going to go. And, of course, you were talking about huge allocations of money through federal defense contracting. Lyndon Johnson was a big part of that. And when he came into the office of the vice presidency, who was really pushed by J. Edgar Hoover, by the FBI, he was there to protect the interest of the organized crime element and the intelligence community's assets together, who were working in conjunction since World War II, and the fact that they were able to manipulate these large military contracts. And war is extremely profitable. And the power structure alters when this happens. Large amounts of money go to the wrong people, and then you've got the influence in the wrong direction and not in the right direction. And President Kennedy was using his wealth and his contacts to really grease the wheels as much as he could, not only for the betterment of the world in that capacity, but also for the intelligence. He was utilizing civilians in this capacity for intelligence rather than trusting the CIA, which he did not trust, and he had a falling out with them. Did not trust them. Had put in for someone named John McCone to clean up the intelligence agency and to weed out these bad rogue elements in the CIA that thought that they had all the power and didn't report back to anybody, didn't give a flying whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Dulles was fired. And now Dulles still operated out of Georgetown with full capacity. President Kennedy could not control this. I've heard the recordings between John McCone and the President of the United States, and I can see the desperation of the President trying to see that if McCone can secure the agency, can push them down, they can get a handle on this thing. And from what I'm listening to, McCone is desperately trying to convince the President that he is in control, but he's not. That they've had a lot of problems of operations that had gone on before Kennedy even got into office. It was out of control. There were political assassinations and coups, all these different things that were happening, and President Kennedy was trying to get a handle on this and trying to figure out a way to fix these enormous problems.
How could something operate outside of the reach of the President of the United States? Is this the government that runs the government, the shadow government?
The President of the United States comes and goes. It's an elected person from the will of the people, supposedly. But the idea is that someone like Mr. Dulles, his responsibility, his understanding is he was in there for life. Hoover was in there for life, and their job was to do what they thought was right for protecting the interests that they wanted to protect. Mr. Dulles came up with the idea that this corporate entity of the world would be a way for us to control everybody, control the whole world system, and that we could always pull the strings when necessary and keep us out of these conflicts. But President Kennedy had a much different idea that people should operate their own countries and be able to be independently democratic. We needed to show the world that democracy worked, and that we needed to lead the world by example, and that people would see that these other things fail and would come to us with open arms and say, "This is opportunity. This is freedom. This is something that works and what we want to, and we want to be a beacon of light for the rest of the world." This was the idea that he had with the Peace Corps and all these other things that were manipulated and perverted by the CIA, and had been and made us distrust. Every country in the world distrusts the United States, and they have every reason to do that. And why we sit back as Americans and say, well, we are the good guys. We have people that are representing us and doing things in the world that we are not the good guys anymore. And I have people calling me after this book has come out in the intelligence services and saying, my God, I feel so guilty of the things that I've done and the processes that I've gone through. I've even sued my government and been in court with these people, with Halliburton and all this stuff, sitting there trying to do the right thing. And it's all hushed and put under seal and secret. And you can't talk about it. But their souls are crying because they don't want to be this way anymore. They don't want to represent these collusions and perversions anymore for wealth and power. It's wrong, and it's not benefiting any of us, and it certainly can destroy all of us very quickly. And if we don't have a good and peaceful world, what sense? Why are we here? What sense of any of this is?
Where are the tapes now?
I have them in my possession. The CIA wanted them brought into the Fourth Circuit of the federal court. They wanted them examined. They ordered a federal order for that. I could not destroy them, but they wanted them brought in, and then they could secure them and classify them. I fought desperately. That's the one thing I fought on. I said, I'm not handing over these recordings. And it took about a year. They threatened my family. They sent agents down to my grandparents' farm, threatened to take that away. They were going to indict my father, who had served with President Kennedy. On and on and on it goes. They brought my mother in and threatened her. So I capitulated. I signed off. I did what 90% of people do in these federal cases, which is they sign a plea agreement and basically saying, I will plead guilty to these charges. I will be open-ended of a 50-year term of imprisonment. I will tell you what you want to know. If I lie, I'm in for 50 years. If I tell the truth, then a federal judge, it's up to them what they want to give me to serve my time out. And so I was under all of that pressure to do this. But at the end of the day, I refused to give the tapes up. The election for 2000 was coming in. They desperately wanted to debrief me on this. They needed to know what was going on with Reagan and with JFK Jr. and with all these other things that were happening, and with Russia. They wanted to know if I was working for the Russians. So they were very, very desperate to debrief me. And finally, the Justice Department said, listen, we'll capitulate on the tapes. You can keep the tapes. We'll give you immunity and your family immunity on it. We just got to get you in here and debrief you. And so we came to an agreement, and I signed it.
How long were you debriefed?
I was in on several different sessions, and they were spaced out. I don't remember the exact amounts of time, but I was questioned by a person in Janet Reno's office. It was put specifically in there for purpose. This person is still part of the Justice Department, or not part of the Justice Department specific, but it's still part of the they were part of the Russian probe that was just going on. I don't want to get too far into that. But the people that I was involved with, the lawyers that I was involved with, all these people are still working in the capacity of how this world and this government is going to operate ongoing. And when they asked me questions, I answered them honestly. There was members of the intelligence people and military that were there, and the FBI investigated what I had to say, and of course, what I had to say came back as truth. So I was lucky in the fact that the federal judge that had my case was understanding of probably more than she let on to what she knew about it, and she said, "You realize I can give you 50 years right now." And I said, "Yes, I understand that." And she said, "Do you want to speak?" I said, "Well, I've been instructed not to speak, and I have to put my faith into the fact that I'm going to honor the agreement that I made." But that was one of the scariest moments of my life, because at that point in time, you realize if that hammer falls and you got 50 years, your life's done. And it's not going to be a pleasant 50 years, and that was a very difficult moment for me.
We've got about 30 seconds before we have to go to a break, but I'd like you to think about an answer to this question. What would happen, since you are the owner of these tapes, if you were to let them go public? We'll be back on the other side of this break, and this is a story, like I've been saying to you, X-Zone Nation, truth is stranger than fiction, and this is the proof that. Is there a shadow government? People say, well, you've been listening for 45 minutes. Make up your own mind. Christopher Fulton is our guest. He's the author of The Inheritance, Poison Fruits of JFK's Assassination. His website is www.cmfulton.com. And Chris and I will be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, Ufo Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
So I was watching the X-Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
SIMULTV.com, sonny boy.
SIMULTV.com.
SIMULTV.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
SIMULTV.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. SIMULTV.com.
Exonation Christopher Fulton is our guest, www.cmfulton.com. He's the author of The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination. First of all, Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always great having you with us, and I admire the amount of integrity and the amount of an Americanism that you have. You know, you are truly a patriot, my friend.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
The question I asked you before we went to our break was, if you own the tapes, why don't you just make them public?
I'd like, before I answer that directly, let me say this. When I was in prison, I wrote an affidavit, a sworn affidavit, went to three places. One went to the Attorney General's office. The other went to my private attorney, which kept that in his safe. And the other affidavit, sworn affidavit, went to the Clintons. This affidavit stated that the President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton was aware of who I was through the ARB. They certainly were briefed about who I was and what I had in my possession. I said, listen, we've got evidence that transferred from the White House that shows the official story of the Warren Commission is not true. And I've been arrested, and you know that I'm doing time through Janet Reno's office. You know this because I'm on the most wanted list. As through the FBI as considered armed and dangerous, and you know that that's not true either. So I said, so I'm doing this incarceration falsely being pulled in to Washington. I said, what I would like is I'd like to turn these materials over to you for your legal agreement to release this to the American people. And I got a response back from the White House, from President Clinton and from Mrs. Clinton. And they both responded in a way that this is what they said. Basically, they said, we understand and we respect the trust that your letter and your request represents. However, you fall outside of the jurisdiction of the United States while being in Canada. We cannot help you in any capacity in this manner. We hope that this resolves to your best course. Saying that, when I was going to write this book, someone flew out from Washington. Again, I can't mention the name, but this person has been close with the first family since Roosevelt, and meets with the CIA every week. He came out and talked to me. He said, "You're going to write a book?" I said, "Yes." I said, "You had all this information. We're aware of this." I said, "What are you going to say in this book?" I said, "Well, I'm just going to tell the truth." He said, "Well, we want you to do two things." I said, what is that? He said, well, first, you're going to base it on a true story. You're not going to make it a true story. You're going to base it on a true story. I said, what's the second part? He said, we don't want you to chase anybody down specifically on this, the Clintons or any other people. We don't want you to chase them down into a corner and make it a problem for anybody. You do that, the book will get out. You don't do that, the book won't get out. So I agreed with those conditions. And then he said, I want you to come in and meet with Mike Pompeo, who was heading up the CIA. He says, I'll guarantee the meeting. I'll guarantee your safety. We'll do it in Virginia, where you've got a private safe house there that we deal with on this. I said, why does Mike Pompeo want to meet with me?
And Mike Pompeo is now the Secretary of State.
He was the head of the CIA, I believe, at the time.
Yeah.
So he said, well, listen, he wants to clean up the agency. He wants you to brief him on this. I said, no, sir. I said, I've done my time on this, and I said, the CIA has been around a long time. I said, Mr. Pompeo might have good intentions and everything else, but I'm not going to come in there and discuss this any further than I already have with the Justice Department. So I turned that down. So to answer your question, if I played these recordings, my protection with the Justice Department says that I have possession. if I were to play these recordings that have not been national security viewed, they were very clear to me about the concern of that as a private citizen. They said, you don't have the right, that this is not, if these materials need to be security reviewed and cannot just be put out there arbitrarily, or there would be prosecutions. So I would assume, even though they didn't put anything specifically to that in my protection, in my blanket immunity, I would assume that by playing those, I could open myself up to a federal problem, which I'm not prepared to do.
I can understand that, and I appreciate that. What is it
Let me say this. Yeah. Let me say one thing real quick before. Sure. And anybody could do this research, and this is what started the Jim Garrison on his quest, and this is what started the movie JFK. JFK, the movie, wouldn't even been made if this had happened. Jim Garrison got on a plane. He met one of the guys from the Warren Commission who knew that this whole thing was a lie.
Right.
And he told Garrison on a plane, he said, listen, the rifle that they say that shot President Kennedy, the Oswald rifle, it's a Carcano rifle. It was designed with a certain length barrel. It has a very, very specific rifling in it. The rifling, all of the grooves of the rifling, I'm not an expert on this, but all the groove of the rifling came towards the end of the barrel, and that's where the precision of the whole weapon came from. The weapon that Oswald had that was shipped over here had a cut-down barrel with a knot. It was not re-rifled or re-grooved. You couldn't hit a side of a barn with that rifle. There was no rifling that gave any accuracy to any bullet that would leave that barrel. And the guy told Garrison, said, the gun that we have that we're saying shot Kennedy in the head would hit the side of a barn. And that became the Garrison began his investigation, and that became what happened to the movie, the JFK. And anybody can go online and do that, do the homework, look into it.
So was Lee Harvey Oswald a patsy?
Lee Harvey Oswald was definitely not what he was claimed to be, and was working in a capacity for informant for the FBI and worked with the CIA. He was working actually through ONI, the Office of Navy Intelligence, and he was his information was going back through Justice Department and trying to keep President Kennedy alive. He had thwarted 2 different attempts that were going to be on his life, but people have to understand these attempts were, in theory, were going to be false flag attempts. They weren't going to kill him; they were going to shoot at him. And then, in the efforts to shoot at him, was that was going to force this position, was going to be a public thing, and then that of course that he didn't kill him, but they were going to utilize that to force his position to invade Cuba. And President Kennedy was desperately trying to avoid that. He did not want to be placed in that position, and he was going to resolve it. Both President Kennedy and his brother, who was watching his back, had come to a way to resolve these issues and resolve the tension with Russia. We're going to work with NASA to open up the making of missiles and work together for the moonshot, which was so important to eliminate any possibility of competition of missile and launching to each other. And we're going to work together. So that way that it would end this Cold War and the possibility of losing all of these millions of lives over a limited strike, and it would nullify the Pentagon's and the intelligence community's plans. That's what President Kennedy was trying to do. He was trying to figure out a way to work it so that the infrastructure that was put in place would be nullified, and that we could go forward as a peaceful nation and a peaceful way. The President of the United States can't come out and say address the American public and say, listen, the Pentagon has plans to nuke Moscow with 170 atomic weapons and take them out first strike. He can't say that. So, but the problem is that he was trying to disclose as much as he could. The University of American Speech, he was trying to get across what he thought peace was about and what it meant to him, and that through the scare of hell through the intelligence communities and the Pentagon, because they know he was secretly using those code words in those speeches, which a lot of people don't realize, but there was code words in those speeches that were being utilized by and recognized by Khrushchev. And he was very serious about ending that Cold War and stopping this insanity, because that's what it was. It was insanity, a war that nobody could win. Once it starts, we all lose. And why would mankind go to all this effort to get to this place and then destroy themselves in an instant? That makes no sense. And the idea that somebody's going to have a limited exchange of this, I mean, it's all pretty much of a kind of an insanity and the worst of humanity. And I think that the people that have the best of humanity, the people that are out there on this radios, that it's a new forefront of freedom and patriotism, because you don't have mainstream media that has the guts and the integrity or the ability to even talk about any real information anymore. I think the people that are good people of the nation, and there's good people all over the world,
yes, there are.
They need to start we need to start being active, proactive. We need to stand up and start saying, I'll be part of this, because I know I've got a million things I got to do and responsibilities that I have to take care of. But the people that are yelling and screaming, look at me, I'm the smartest guy in the block and the richest guy in the block, and it all belongs to me. That's got to end. It's this whole idea that we're put on the planet to hoard it all for ourselves, and whoever dies with the most wins is ridiculous. We're here to help each other. We're here to share our human experience with each other, and to support that system. And that's when you sleep good at night. That's when you feel good that you've helped your fellow man, and that you made a difference, and maybe some suffering that I've had or can help in some way. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I took the risk of doing that. I felt an obligation. I felt an obligation to my mother. I felt an obligation to President Kennedy and to Robert Kennedy and to JFK Jr., who made an attempt.
Christopher, as always, whenever you're with us, time goes by so fast. But once again, my friend, I admire your courage. I admire your patriotic way of living your life. And I thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you and your ability to get information to good people. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Exonation, the name of the book is The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination. Christopher Fulton, the author, along with Michelle Fulton, two very brave and courageous people. They're down to earth. You've heard Christopher talk. He talks from the heart. And if you'd like to get a copy of this book, visit his website, www.cmfulton.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, to get a copy of The Inheritance, www.cmfulton.com.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, Ufo Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.